two worlds in one crowd.
Let us start with a quick show of hands. How many of you enjoyed that piece of music?
And how many of you thought it sounded human?
Well, we have a small confession.
That entire piece of music was generated by artificial intelligence.
No composer, no singer, just a short prompt typed into a machine.
And it took us about 30 seconds to generate.
The first time we heard something like this, our reaction was, well, complicated.
A little awe,
A little excitement,
and honestly, a little discomfort.
especially when we heard this. A blind study by Deezer and Ipsos found that 97% of the 9,000 participants could not distinguish between AI-generated music and human-created music.
And over half of those participants felt uncomfortable to discover that they couldn't tell the difference.
Which made us ask, if a machine can create something so real that moves us emotionally, what does it mean for human creativity? And maybe a little more deeply, what does it mean for how we define ourselves as creators?
We aren't the only ones concerned or the only ones asking those questions. Just last year, the CEO of Universal Music, the world's largest record label, issued an urgent memo stating that AI was enabling human-generated machines to flood streaming platforms, displacing human artists.
Over 50,000 AI-generated songs are uploaded every single day to Deezer. Imagine, during this talk alone, AI will have created more songs than the Beatles, Rolling Stones, and every Grammy winner combined.
Before we continue, you might be wondering why two MBA students are up on this stage talking about AI and creativity. Well, music has shaped both of our lives in very different ways.
I grew up training in Hindustani classical music in a tradition passed down orally for millennia, in what we call the Guru Shishya Parampara. There is no books or notations or written music. We sit with our teacher, we listen, we improvise, and we internalize. Over time, the music becomes a conversation across generations, a conversation across centuries.
And I was a professional performer in a very different world, opera. Opera comes from a long-standing Western tradition of notation, melodic structure, and dramatic storytelling. As an opera singer, your creative expression comes from the interpretation of music that has already been written, sometimes many years ago.
Two traditions, thousands of miles apart, yet at their core, both of them have asked the same human questions.
How do we preserve identity across generations? How do we transmit emotion through sound? And how do we express something that language alone sometimes struggles to carry? Well, let's go back in time and experience what that sounded like.
What you heard is a form of unmetered improvisation in Hindustani classical music called alap.
Paired with extracts of a famous opera by Bellini.
As music evolved, we embedded systems within it. Key signatures, scales, chord progressions, rules, and these created familiar patterns. Let us show you what we mean.
Have you ever heard that music and math go hand in hand? Well, there's a reason for this. In the Western world, we have created a system of 7 notes. Each of these notes have their own relationship with one another, and these are the foundation of 98% of the music that we've created. This is called a scale, and it sounds like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, back to 1, or do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do.
And in Indian classical music, we have hundreds of ragas, each associated with a certain time of day, certain set of notes, and also even seasons. For instance, the raga that I sang earlier was called Yaman, and that goes like ni re ga ma da ni sa sa ni da pa ma ga re sa, and it's typically sung in the evenings.
So why does this matter? Well, music is made up of patterns, and patterns eventually become formulas.
And once creativity becomes formulaic, it becomes data. And once creativity becomes data, well, it becomes replicable by AI.
At its core, AI is surprisingly simple. It looks at patterns from very large amounts of data, and then it learns how to predict what comes next. Not because it understands, but because it recognizes relationships. Humans experience life in a very different way. We hear a lullaby and we associate and we feel that comfort. When we listen to a heartbreak song, we might feel a sense of loss.
Dunira, how would it sound like to feel joy?
Rejoice, rejoice, rejoice greatly. And Ari, how does it sound to feel pensive?
But when AI processes the same sounds, it doesn't feel joy or heartbreak. It just imitates the data that it's fed. And in music, that comes in the form of those patterns that we spoke about earlier.
How notes relate to one another, which rhythms or chords tend to repeat themselves, and how certain harmonies historically resolve.
AI isn't inventing something new from nothing. It's essentially just holding up a mirror to everything that we have collectively created and optimized for over the years. But the question remains, if the reflection is good enough, does the mirror matter?
And, well, how exactly do we know that machines can't feel anything? It sounds wacky, I know. But consider this. We only ever experience one consciousness, our own. We never directly feel what anybody else is feeling. We're just inferring that from their behavior.
So when someone smiles, we assume joy. When someone cries, we assume sadness. But all we effectively observe is signal and response.
If one day a machine responds with what feels like curiosity or empathy or joy, well, on what basis do we declare that we don't feel anything inside?
Anthropic, the company behind the world's most advanced AI systems today, has a model well-being program. What does that mean? In fact, the CEO himself admitted that there is a possibility that their own models are conscious because their LLMs have started to show activations that are similar to human anxiety.
So perhaps the line between human experience and machine experience isn't actually as clean as we'd like it to be.
But here is another perspective. Creativity doesn't come from intelligence or data. It comes from human experiences. It comes from crying, from loving, from losing, from living. A machine has never truly lived, so AI may be able to, generate combinational or exploratory creativity, but generally breaking the rules, pushing the boundaries, require a kind of motivation that only lived experience can provide.
Surely a machine can never hack into that emotional, authentic, human self that makes us feel something. That space which ultimately makes our creative endeavors relatable. It's that space that makes you clutch at your chest when you listen to fantastic music or cry when you watch an emotional scene in a movie.
But much of this human experience is also encoded in stories, in movies, in music, in archives, in memory. That is exactly the data that our AI models learn from. So what matters more, the experience of life itself, or the meaning that we or the AI models extract from it?
When Billie Holiday or Taylor Swift sing about heartbreak, well, they've actually lived that heartbreak. Every note, every lyric, it holds a specific history to them. But when we, the listeners, the audience, listen to that same song, well, we don't need to know their history. We bring our own. So the song becomes a meeting point between their experience and ours.
So when a machine with no lived experience creates a beautiful piece of music or art, does it still work?
Can it still move you?
Well, until now, we've been talking about human emotions and machine experience in two silos. But no composer ever creates in isolation. Every melody carries centuries of influence. Every idea stands of thousands of forgotten teachers, cultures, failures, and experiments.
Maybe the real mistake is thinking creativity was ever purely individual to begin with. Therefore, AI doesn't need to be a takeover. It can be a collaborator, a tool that expands human boundaries rather than only replicating or even replacing it.
The Beatles used AI to isolate John Lennon's voice from a decades-old cassette tape and recreated a song that he never got to finish. It reached #1 on the charts, and it also won a Grammy.
Internationally renowned composer Holly Herndon trained an AI model on 50,000 voices, and she made an album in which that AI model was an equal contributor.
When creativity becomes collective, the question shifts. It's no longer whether AI will replace human creativity. It becomes, going forward, what kind of a creative ecosystem do we want to build together with them?
And where does that leave us? History, it turns out, may have an answer.
In 1965, folk purists booed Bob Dylan off of the stage at Newport because he picked up the electric guitar.
In 1982, the UK Musicians Union tried to ban synthesizers in order to protect human jobs.
And in 2010, Time magazine named autotune as one of the 50 worst inventions in human history.
All of these technologies are now ubiquitous.
All of these technologies have moved human creativity to a new era. And the same is true for creativity today. Human creativity has not been and will not be diminished by AI. It will be expanded. It'll push us to a new era, an era where we will have to make a lot of the right choices, choices about what we generate and what we preserve, choices about who owns what is created and who gets to benefit from it, choices about what we regulate and what we leave for human judgment.
So we would like to show you a simple example of what this human AI collaborative creativity might look like. We have created a final performance that harks back to that AI-generated piece you heard at the beginning of the talk. This time, it's a little bit different.
We took the piece of music in the beginning and brought our own imaginations to it, reshaped the lyrics, reworked the music arrangement, and essentially created a feedback loop between AI and humans.
Will you have more of an emotional response to the previous piece?
Or will you be surprised by how this new version of machine-human creativity will touch you? By the river, echoes in our chest.
I lean into memory.
You lean into breath, this in our heartbeat. West in my report, one breath between us, two worlds in one cry. Thank you.